Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel and blog. This is Jenny Hall. Today I have another card tutorial for you. This time we're working with Cookie Cutter Halloween stamp set from Stampin' Up, the Cookie Cutter Punch and Jar of Haunts stamp set. To start out this project, I'm using a piece of basic black cardstock, and once it's folded and scored, it measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm also using a piece of white cardstock that is cut 1/8 of an inch smaller, so that once it's placed on the piece of black, the black will frame the white. The sentiment I'm using for this card is from Jar of Haunts, which is a really groovy stamp set. I love it. I love it. The sentiment is Happy Halloween, and it's a small sentiment that's not going to overpower the whole overall design of the card. I'm using the piece of Designer Series paper from Halloween Night Specialty Designer Series paper, and there's one of the papers that are in the pack that looks like brick wall. So what I'm doing is just using a very small portion of this paper, excuse me, and what I want to do is give the visual of like a brick wall without using too much paper. The reason that I chose the colors for this card as gray, white, and black with accents of color is that whenever I added the accents to the trick-or-treater, I wanted those colors to just really jump out at the person receiving the card. So therefore, I wanted to keep all of the background elements of the card, such as the wall, the tree, the card base, and then the card front. I wanted all of these elements to be very neutral so that the pieces of the trick-or-treater, the different elements that make up the trick-or-treater's costume would really be what the focus is of the card. So it is intentional whenever I plan a card as to what colors that I'm using. Sometimes it just kind of happens and it's a happy accident, but oftentimes than not, it's because I'm planning out a design scheme to be the focus around something. So I'm getting to use this little skeleton trick-or-treater image on a piece of white cardstock, and the ink I'm using is Memento Tuxedo Black. It's just a very basic ink pad that it's very versatile. You can use it for just about any kind of stamping. And I'm using the image of the trick-or-treat bag and stamping it on a piece of like a strip of white cardstock. This image is a little bow that can be used in several different ways, and I'm using one of my Stampin' Up markers in Melon Mambo. This is a bold, bright color, and I want the Melon Mambo to just jump right up off this card because it's going to be in contrast to the neutral colors. So the way that I planned out the use of paper and the use of stamping with this card is whenever I'm using a punch, I like to look at the punch and be conscious of where the images are and how I'm going to be able to place the paper into that punch to be successful. Right now I am using the marker Wild Wasabi, and I used that's also another very vibrant green color. So that's what I colored the candy inside the trick-or-treat bag. And I also used just a touch of yellow. And then there is pumpkin pie. Being conscious to make sure that I convey what all the coloring is for you guys. That way, in case you want to emulate this card. The base of the trick-or-treat bag is Perfect Plum, and the yellow that I used is Crushed Curry. So I'm fussy cutting out the trick-or-treat bag, and it's not part of the punch. The punch is part of the kids that are in Cookie Cutter Halloween, but there's some elements such as the raven, the bat, and the trick-or-treat bag Those things are not, there wasn't anything on the punch to use. The marker I'm using to color the skeleton trick-or-treater is Smoky Slate. And I want to give you guys a tip. When you're coloring with markers, and especially Stampin' Write markers, every marker is going to work differently. The Stampin' Up markers that are called Stampin' Write markers are dye ink. It's actually the same ink that is in the stamp pads and in the re-inkers. You can re-ink both your markers and your stamp pads. You can color in layers, and you can intensify the colors by adding another layer of color on top of something you just colored. For instance, the cardstock is going to absorb a certain amount of the gray marker on the first time around, but if I go a second and a third time just in certain areas, the gray will get darker and intensify, like you're stamping over yourself. So when I put the paper down into the punch, I was conscious of how it was going to fall. This is the Thoughtful Branches die set. It's called Beautiful Branches, and I'm using the tree image from Beautiful Branches. It's a very simple and classic looking tree, and I thought it would lend itself very well to the design of this card. And again, I'm keeping with the neutral color theme so that all of the elements of the trick-or-treater will just pop. I'm using liquid glue to adhere the tree down to the card, and I will use liquid glue throughout most of the application of the elements of this card, just because it works a little bit better in some instances. You may have whatever your favorite adhesive is, and yeah, we all know what we like to use. This is the image of the little raven, and I am stamping him directly down onto the cardstock, and I kind of put my finger on the little brick wall so that whenever I put the raven, it would look like his feet were kind of sitting on top of the bricks. So I tried to get it down as close as I could. I have stamped the ink, tuxedo black memento, sorry, up at for the bat up at the top, and I've applied the glue directly to the wall of the card, you know, the little walkway wall, instead of applying it to the trick-or-treater. And I'll give you a tip as to why I did that. In my experience, in my crafting, whenever I apply glue, it's hard for me to be able to target exactly the area that I'm going to glue onto if there's going to be an overhang. I don't want to have extra glue hanging off of my card and dripping everywhere. So I have found just a little tip that if I apply the glue directly down to the card where I know that the piece is going to go onto, then it works a little bit better for me with positioning what my elements of the card. And I did the same on the bow, and I did the same on the trick-or-treat bag. And I'm using that yellow crushed curry marker for the eyes of the bat. I'm including in this video how I attach my sequins to a card because I've had recent inquiries as to how do I select sequins for my card, because if you're a subscriber to my channel, you know that I almost always put sequins on the card. I really like sequins. So if this interests you, then you'll be glad to know that I don't have a specific formula other than I look to see what's going to complement the design of the card. I think that the sequins should not take away from the focal point of the card. So often I will choose clear iridescent or ivory colored ones, or it depends on what I have in my stash that I have that matches the project that I'm working on. In this instance, I chose the ivory from Lucy's cards, and I like them because the iridescent shine doesn't overpower the design of the card, and they have different sizes. In this little baggie that I got of sequins, there's like 9 different shapes and sizes. Really a good, the sequins are not expensive, and it's a nice way to add something that you can afford to your card. And to have 9 different varieties, that's really bringing your dollar a long way. So whenever I'm placing my sequins around the card, the formula I follow is go in odd numbers. And I try to do it in more or less a triangle shape. All of these items are pleasing to a design. So it's just the basic formula that I try to follow. And I'm going to my trusty glitter glue just to add a little bit of sparkle onto this little trick-or-treater girl's bow. And I add little sparkle dots around to be kind of like stars, bright points in the sky. So this is the card that I have for you. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like button. And if you haven't already done so, please do subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss out on any card making videos. Thanks for joining me today. I'll see you in the next video.